All right, let's get started. So, hi everyone. For all of those joining us now, we do have a poll for you to answer as you join. We really want this to be as kind of interactive as possible. So please do make sure you join in with the polls and the questions. Welcome all. So we do have people from all over the world. So good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are joining us from. And welcome to our Trinnovo Talks for Black History Month US. Today we're going to be talking about the Great Resignation, and we really want to explore how best to promote wellness in the workplace. So from us today, you can expect an hour of panel discussion with live Q&A throughout and half an hour of networking for those that wish to continue the conversation further. For anyone that needs subtitles, please do check the chat function on how to access them, and all the instructions will be there for you. So to introduce myself, for anyone that doesn't know, I'm Aisha Tabal. I'm going to be the host and chair for the webinar. My role, I place talent into life science companies at BioTalent, which is part of Trinnovo Group. And our aim as a group is to build teams that reflect the diverse world that we live in. So Trinnovo Talks is part of Trinnovo Group. We're a fast growth international recruitment company, and we bring together 3 market segments as well as our own social enterprise. So we have Trust and Soda, and they focus on digital and technology recruitment. We have Broadgate Search, and they focus on business enablement and protection recruitment. And we have my company, BioTalent, which is life science recruitment. As I mentioned, we also have our own social enterprise, ex-militarycareers.com, and that enables ex-military, there are the poll results, that enables ex-military career success. And our group mission is to build diversity, create inclusion, and encourage workplace innovation. And this is really built in to the fabric of our thinking. So a lot of people don't actually know what the Great Resignation is. This basically refers to an economic trend that, according to The Guardian, saw 4.5 million individuals leave their jobs by the end of 2021. As we saw the world very much change before our eyes throughout 2020, it really became clear that there were many areas within the workplace that needed improvement. So the Great Resignation began in the US and kind of spread throughout the world, and was definitely something of a mass exodus. People were leaving roles that they'd been in for years to start their own businesses or change career paths completely and find workplaces that really did cultivate that culture of wellness. And concerns then about financial wellness, mental health, social, physical, and career well-being came to the forefront of workplace wellness. And really, for the first time, we were thinking about how to create wellness really within the workplace, especially as we saw the lines between work life and home life being quite blurred. So for African Americans, this is highlighted and exacerbated against a backdrop of discrimination and inequality. According to the US Census Bureau 2019, more than 58% of Black households don't have enough savings to cover 3 months of expenses at the federal poverty rate. This means that there's often that hard choice to be made between staying in a role where your needs are not being met and being able to afford the basics. So this is why creating a culture of wellness and inclusion within the workplace for Black employees is so important. We are in a time where hustle culture, this is basically the pressure to be working harder, be working more, be working smarter, and generally just doing more is very pervasive. And the Great Resignation as a whole saw people realizing that putting family and friends and wellness generally on the back burner to work themselves to the bone was not only unhealthy, but it was also very unnecessary, because there is a way that we can have a healthy balance of career and personal life. And we're going to be exploring some of the ways that we can do that in our discussion today. So the aim for our discussion really is to help drive change. We want to be having meaningful discussion on how to create inclusive workplaces. We want to be discussing all of our lived experiences and reflect on progress, but also highlight where there is room for improvement. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we really want to make the discussion as engaging as possible. So if you have any questions for our panel throughout the webinar, please do use the Q&A section, or you can ask them in the side panel, and we'll get through as many of these as possible. And finally, then, before we kick things off, please note this is being recorded and it will be uploaded to our Trinnovo Group YouTube channel, where you can also access all of our previous webinars. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our fabulous panel, all of whom are in the US, located in New Orleans, Atlanta, and Ohio. We'd love to also know a bit more about our audience, so please do let us know where you are located throughout the world in our chat box. So over to our panel. If you could introduce yourself and your role and experience and a key passion, either within health and wellness or in general life. And it would also be really good if you could let us know how you take rest to reset. And for the audience, we're going to have a poll for you so you can answer that question alongside. So let's start with the lovely Tyra Gross, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
It's 12:08 p.m. here, so I'll say good afternoon, but I do see that people are tuning in from all over. I am Dr. Tyra Gross. I'm an assistant professor of public health sciences at a historically Black college called Xavier University of Louisiana here in New Orleans. It's carnival time. We got king cake. The kids are getting out of daycare early because parades are rolling, y'all. That is the season. So a lot of people are in high spirits, given everything we've endured over the past 2 years. So I would say my passion really is self-care. In the past year, I've started getting some life coach training to really help people think about how they can be better and how they can grow into the best vision they have for themselves. And how I rest, if you look in my virtual background, it's very intentional. This is a picture from our largest municipal park, city park here in New Orleans. I got married there. I take my little boy to go scooter riding there. And it's so I just try to go to park and reset through nature, whether I'm power walking, jogging, stretching, whatever. I have the window open right now. So just being closer to nature, I feel like really, really, really makes a difference for me. So happy to see everyone here, and hi to all the panelists.
Thank you, Tyra. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Personally, I think being in nature really allows you to kind of ground yourself and recenter. So yeah, lovely. And thank you for introducing yourself. Next, we have Sinead Young. So Sinead, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Well, greetings, everyone. And the same good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. So my name is Sinead Young, and I'm a professor of psychology at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm also the director of the Institute for Social Justice Inquiry and Praxis with the Andrew Young Center for Global Leadership. And I'm a community psychologist by training and do a lot of work in public health. And also, I've been thinking about the question of how do we rest and reset. And I would love to say that I take long walks in nature, but I've really been binge watching all shows that give me a lot of joy. So, if it's a sad show, I will not watch it. But if it's something that invokes joy, I will watch it. And then when the weather permits here in Atlanta, I also garden quite a bit. So I'm starting to get my garden ready because it's warming up here. So thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, thank you, Sinead. I agree. Sometimes you just need to switch off and binge. And yeah, that's definitely my go-to after, if it's been like a very long day at work. And, you know, I agree, something really lighthearted, something funny that I've seen a couple of times, that will really, yeah, definitely, I agree. Thank you, Sinead. Next, we have Angelica Hardy. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Dr. Angelica Hardy. I am coming from Cincinnati, Ohio. So previously it was in the Super Bowl, so I'm going to shout that out, even though I feel like we should have won. So I currently serve as Vice President of Health Strategy at the American Heart Association, and really focus on public health work, a strong center in health equity. The passion question was hard because I go all things public health, really just improving the community health overall, but really have been passionate about both maternal and infant health over the last few years. Did that for my dissertation years ago, and then came and just it continues to be a center for me. When it comes to rest and reset, I do love to walk, but in Ohio, it is very cold still. So that, I'm be honest, I don't really like going outside in the cold. So right now, my biggest love, I used to love to read actual physical books. And after reading and being academic, reading is just, it stopped being as fun, even when I want to do it for enjoyment. So I've really started getting into listening to my books and walking when the weather permits. And it's interesting how your loves change, because I'm like, I want to read the book, but I find myself not seeking the joy because I read all day. So it's been a nice way to change my brain, but that's my rest and reset. Listening to various different books, funny, sad, doesn't matter, but I'm not actually reading them. So yeah.
Thank you, Angelica. Yeah, I agree. And I think audiobooks and even like podcasts are so special, because if you think about how stories were told originally, it was all orally. And I think that might be a reason why it feels so relaxing to just listen. So yeah, thank you for introducing yourself. And last but certainly not least, we have Justin Wilson. So if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Welcome. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Justin Wilson, also AKA Dr. Just Love on social media. But I am an assistant professor here at Xavier University in Louisiana, where I teach in the College of Pharmacy, and I also teach in the physician assistant program. So I help to increase the diverse pool of our future healthcare providers. For the rest and reset, I too put a picture up, if you guys can see it. I don't know if you can see it. Okay, the mountain. I just came back from Colorado for my rest and reset over the past 6 or 7 days. And what we do here, we try to do something every 21 days within the month to rest, to reset, and recharge, whether it's a trip, whether it's an event that's locally, because we have Mardi Gras occurring right now here in New Orleans. But we chose to go skiing as a group of couples to get away. And in addition to that, we usually have something where we do a digital detox. So we kind of shut down anything that deals with work and only focus on the things digitally that care and matter to us, that add to us. And so that's something that I do. The one thing or two areas that I'm extremely passionate about, of course, is men's health and cardiovascular health, because my background, I have a PhD in biophysics and physiology. And cardiovascular health, renal health are very important to me, since those are the #1 killers of people around the world. And so I'm just grateful to be here, and I'm glad to be a part, and I can't wait to hear what everyone has to say.
Thank you, Justin. Yes, I think you just made such a brilliant point about digital detoxing, because, you know, before we used to log into things and then log out, and now everything is just logged in all the time. I personally take really long breaks from social media when I can feel myself just simply being overloaded with information. Information overload is a big thing, I think. So I love that. And I hope you enjoyed your time in Colorado as well. Love the mountains. Thank you all so much for introducing yourself. Hopefully the audience gets a bit of an idea of everyone's background, but of course throughout everyone's kind of areas of expertise will definitely shine through. So with that being said, I think let's get started with the big question. And I'd like to direct this to everyone. What do you think would be the key catalyst? There's obviously a lot of reasons that the Great Resignation has happened, but if you were to focus in on a key catalyst, what would you say that would be? We can start with whoever would like to go first.
I'll go. Justice, that's totally. I was just going to say, I think we really started to understand what was important to us. You know, in the midst of the pandemic, we were all very unsure, right, of the future. And for lack of a better word, very scared of what the future would bring, our families, our homes. Like, there was just so much unknown. So we really started to think more intentionally about what was really important to us. And I think that was the key catalyst. Like, if everything, the world went crazy, which it did, you know, what was really key in that moment? And that centering, I think, played a huge role.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Angelica. Justin?
I was going to say, I was just thinking really self-love, like Angelica as well, like the piggyback. It was like a big amount of self-love. A lot of my friends who transitioned during this time for careers at the beginning, middle, and as hopefully they coming to the end of the pandemic, they just got burnt out for dedicating so much of their time to a job or to a career field where there were physicians saying, okay, I don't want to be a physician anymore. I've gone to school for 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, 3 to 4 years for residency. I'm on the front lines and I just can't do it anymore. The hospitals are over, it's just too much. And they decided to choose love and love themselves. And some people I know have opened up coffee shops and just completely switched fields based out of realizing their own worth. And it's not only about a paycheck, but their mental health. Like, I think that was the biggest thing that I saw from some of the people that I've interacted with, and even, of course, some of the things that we've read about.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone has said. And I also think that there's a risk calculation that all of us do when we are thinking about making a career move. And the pandemic brought about this risk calculation for many of us, including this idea that a lot of us can live on a lot less money than we thought. So, you know, my self-care routines used to involve a spa day and a this and a that, and now you simplify your life. So a lot of the, you know, I don't want to call it extravagance, but I think, for lack of a better word, some of the expenses that we had pre-pandemic, we didn't have anymore. And so we started doing these calculations that maybe we can simplify our lives. But, you know, I think, to echo Justin's point, also this love for ourselves and for our family. Unfortunately, many of us have lost loved ones in the pandemic, and it does make you take a step back and think about, well, what is important? And does this job fulfill me in the same way that perhaps it did when you first started it? So I think some of that is a calculation as well.
I think what the pandemic, at least the initial wave of the pandemic, it threw a big red stop sign up. And a lot of people, maybe not so much for our dear friends that were working on the front lines and continue to work on the front lines, but for many of us, we were still, and we had to figure out, oh my goodness, what is going on? So I think so many people have been so busied and preoccupied. And when everything shuts down, when you can't go to your coffee shop, when you can't just go parlay in Target, I don't think y'all have Target in the UK, I'm not sure. But when you can't just escape to all of these places that really are luxuries, right? If you have additional income to spend, then you're kind of like, oh my goodness, what is life? Who am I? I've never had this free time, or where am I headed? Right? Which direction do I want to continue on this track? I'm looking at people around me, I'm spending more time with them, and I'm recognizing where we've grown apart or where we're growing closer. And I think a lot of people were, they were forced to be still. Looking at the poll, a lot of people mentioned alone time. So I think a lot of people just had this moment of pause where their brain and their emotions and then everything that's going on around them are starting to send them messages about, like, you weren't good before this, but now, is, you're at a crossroads of whether you want to continue in that way. And being invited to say, you know what, I think Shanique mentioned only watching things that make her feel joyful, right? It's like, do you want to pick joy or do you want to pick the status quo that you were doing before? So I think for a lot of people, just like, it was this big, like, screeching halt stop sign and people having to choose, whether they continue on their current route or choose a new destination. And a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm out. I'm gonna, it's vulnerable. I may not have as much money saved as I thought, but this risk seems so worth it that I'm going to choose a new direction.
Yes, thank you. No, thank you all. I think really everyone hit the nail on the head there. When you have to pause, not when you choose to pause, when you have to pause and reevaluate your values, what's important to you and where you are headed. And like Justin said, how much are you putting into yourself versus how much are you putting into others? I think that's when you can really start evaluating. And I think something that underpins everything that you all mentioned is choice. Like, whereas before it seemed as if there was a lack of choice, there was only one way to go, especially if people followed the, kind of direct route. So here in the UK, it's secondary school, sixth form, university. Like with my sixth form, which I'm not sure what the equivalent would be, but when you are between 16 and 18 before you go off to college, like, for example, in my sixth form, no one had a choice. Everyone had to sign up to it's called UCAS, the platform that you have to like apply to universities. So you are very much guided in that direction. And then a lot of people stopped and thought, what about the choices that I've made? Maybe have I made the right choices for myself? So definitely. And I think it was drastic. I mean, 4.5 million people is a lot of people, but a lot of people are so much happier for it. So that's really good. And how do you think then grind culture has played a part in the Great Resignation? We mentioned about being burnt out. And when you are burnt out, that's another point in which, again, you don't have a choice. You do have to stop. Do you think, or how do you think this played a part? So Tyra, you spoke before the last question. Do you want to go first with this one?
It's funny, I actually just thought to Google what the definition of grind is. So to reduce something to small particles or powder by crushing it. Rub or cause to rub together gratingly. I don't think that definition ever was meant to apply to humans. I think about like a mortar and pestle, or like, you cooking some spices, and I don't think that word was meant for human beings. And that's why I look at the definition like, but there is one that says hard, dull work. So a lot of people are doing hard, dull work. They're feeling reduced to small particles. They feel like, they're being crushed by the weight of it all. And then once they had to pause, it's like, wait, what am I really doing this for? I was listening to a podcast episode where a lady was talking about redefining wealth for yourself. And she mentioned that a lot of people, are not sleeping, they're caffeinated, they're not eating well to make money now that they're going to have to spend on health expenses later, honestly, because of what they're doing to themselves by burnout. And I thought that was so poignantly said, that we think that we're getting somewhere, but we're really digging ourselves in the hole by grinding.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Tyra. Sinead, do you want to?
Sure. Yeah, I think, my experience is that of a first generation immigrant. And so I think that there's, just ongoing narratives around immigrants. And I think about that old In Living Color sketch, which some of you may be too young to remember. But, the Jamaican immigrant had 10 jobs. And I think whether you're an immigrant or perhaps even the first generation in your family to work in a corporate or academic job, there's an idea that you owe your family to be successful. And so this idea that you're going to live a leisurely lifestyle or take time off or go on holiday or, any of these things, I think becomes foreign. So for me, as an immigrant and as someone who is first generation to work in an academic setting, I think a lot of people tend to take pride in how hard they're working, how tired they are, how they haven't taken a holiday. And it is, I think, again, many of us, and I'm Generation X. So many of us in this generation, and hopefully the ones coming behind us, are realizing that that's not healthy. It's not the model. And there's really no pride in being overworked, and especially here in the States, leaving your vacation time on the table, which many of us do who work in corporate or in academia. I don't even think we understand what a vacation means. So I think that culture has absolutely contributed. And I do think that we are in a turning point where we're realizing it does not serve us well.
Yeah. Thank you, Sinead. Angelica, Justin, do either of you want to?
Justin, you want to go first, or you want?
Sure, I'll go. I'll let you go ahead and take care of that.
I know. I was like, y'all see my earring down the middle. Scared me.
No, it's good. It's so funny, Sinead, when you were speaking, you said first generation immigrant, and I was thinking, well, first generation college students myself, to have gone as a Black male when in grade school. I was just talking about this. In grade school, they used to tell the Black males that you were not going to make it to 21. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And I wish that teacher was still alive so I could tell her. But it's just interesting when you come from Chicago, a certain area, you already have your earmark where you're not gonna make it. So when you go out, and I go out of state to college and ascertain my bachelor's degree and then my PhD and postdoc, it's like your family expects you to continue to soar. You're the one that has the money. You're the one that you have to do this, and that. And I didn't start taking vacations until 365 days ago. So this is my anniversary of my first vacation I started to really start taking. During the pandemic, I realized I was grinding so hard to work for tenure. For each job that you work really hard, you develop curricula, you do all these different things. I never took my vacations. And in February last year, I said, I don't care if it's a pandemic, I'm gonna live. I hopped on a plane, masked up, and I decided to give up the grind culture to enjoy my vacations. And so this is what spurred the every 21 days, take a break. And it sounds weird as a millennial, but I decided that I can't live the grind culture anymore because it was affecting my mental health. It was, and the fact that I think I had 13 family members that had died right before that time from the pandemic, and really no support, when you're isolated. And then you have to realize, okay, there's more to live. Those individuals are gone, but you have to live for yourself today. And so that grind culture for me shifted at that moment of 365 days ago, actually probably almost to this date. It was on the 13th, I think. But you just have to live. You have to give up those things that your family, whether your parents or even your coworkers may have on you to grind. So I know tenure is a very important thing for a lot of us as faculty, but at the end of the day, what's more important is the ones that you love and that love you, are they able to see you? And are they able to have a wonderful relationship with you? Are you upset, angry, or frustrated when you have family time? Do you even have family time, right? And so for me, the grind culture shifted. And it was the narrative that social media showed that, okay, as a Black man, I should have this kind of business. I should have a daytime job. I should have an online blog. I should have a podcast. I should have an online store in order to be successful. But I am successful that I made it out of Chicago alive at the age of 18 because the teacher told me I was not going to make it, right? And to finish a doctoral degree, I think when I finished my degree, it was 0.0015% of person that year, Black, to have gotten a degree. And it's the highest degree of the land. And it's not only just about education, but it's monumental that, you know, we as people of color are able to do those things today. So for me, the grind culture is a fallacy. It's a thing that's going to kill us. It's a thing that causes an increased amount of stress already on a population that is stressed out. And even when you think about it on the research side, like I study hypertension and the inflammatory markers that causes hypertension. Increase in stress causes an increase in circulating levels of inflammation. And we all know that inflammation causes other diseases. So that grind culture is killing us. Let's decrease, let's breathe, let's reset. Do as I do every 21 days, take a break, take a walk, shut off your phone, go ghost, whatever you have to do.
Thank you for sharing, Justin. Yes, Angelica.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna implement that. I do very well on vacation, but I've never done every 21 days. And like put it on your calendar like you put everything else. So I love that, Justin. I appreciate that tidbit. For me, it's wonderful that I went after Justin because I actually really was in a bad place actually about 5 years ago. Yesterday, I celebrated 5 years after completing my dissertation defense. And it was a wonderful day. Oh, thank you. It was a wonderful day. But I remember just being I was happy, but I was so unhappy because I was unhealthy. I was miserable. I had done everything to get out at that time because it was a real bad at the end of the road. I think there's already just grad school, but then there were a lot of life things happening as well. And I just remember not being able to celebrate at that moment truly because I was just the grind had just wore me out. And I normally celebrate the day because I was grinding so hard when I finished and then continued to, unfortunately, after, because I'm like, now I got to get a job. It just never stopped. And I really started to change that and set boundaries and went into a little bit into my career setting those boundaries. And I think even when the pandemic started, those boundaries were kind of blurred, as you mentioned earlier, because we were like, oh, well, you're home all the time, so you can work all the time. And I'm like, no. So saying no is extremely important to working against the grind culture and just like your overall wellness. Like if you're unhappy, you can't bring your best self to work. And even if that work is on the screen, if that work is in person, it doesn't matter. If you're not able to really take time to rest and reset, as we've talked about, it really hurts. So I schedule lunches in the morning. I love to work out. So don't schedule. If you see that it's blocked on the calendar, there's blocked for a reason. And sometimes I'll do evening stuff, but not all the time. And that was something I had to do because I work in community work at the American Heart Association. And a lot of stuff was in the evening in person at that time. And I would have stuff every day in the evening. Why was I doing that? That's insane. Like I didn't have time for my family. I didn't have time for myself. So it just really was changing the way I thought about it. But I had to get to a really bad place before I was able to implement those things. So utilize all the amazing tips that everyone's given today, because I think that really helps you early on rather than getting to a bad place and then having to build yourself back up.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you all so much for your insight. I think it's really good that we have a wide range of views. I really love, Sinead, the fact that you touched on being a first gen and how that influences you. And of course, we can't shy away from the fact that as Black people, you often feel like, and often is the reality, that you do have to do more in order to obtain what others, you just have to do more. And a lot of it will be, I think it's really interesting that we touched on the fact that as the generations, because I think before, again, it's just what the norm was work yourself to the bone. There isn't really much time for enjoyment or wellness, and that's just it. And for so long, so I'm between millennial and Gen Z. I'm like the final year, so I think of myself as like a zillennial. But for the longest time, it was, millennials are lazy. They don't want to work. They don't want to work, for the fact that we didn't want to give our whole lives to work, especially considering the fact that with a lot of work, like you'll change workplaces, you'll change roles. So having given so much of your time to a place where then you move on, yeah, a lot of people just realized it wasn't worth it. And I definitely think, and Justin, what you said about having to have this business, I think social media has really just poured oil on the flames. So if you don't have a 9 to 5 and then a side hustle, and you're doing this and you're doing that, then it's like, what are you even doing? So it's interesting that we do have, you know, in the same breath, it's, we need to take care of ourselves, we need to put wellness first, but then it's also, but you're not doing enough, you can be doing more. And I'm not sure, yeah, the side hustle culture. I'm not sure if this was really such a big deal over in the US, but a few weeks ago, there was a whole debacle here with somebody called Molly May on a podcast, who had mentioned that, so she comes from quite a privileged background, and said, you know, we all have the same 24 hours in the day. And I think people did not take issue with the statement, which has been, she's not the first or the last person to say that, but it was coming from someone that is so privileged. Someone that does have that amount of privilege does not have the same 24 hours as, for example, Justin, as you mentioned, you know, coming from Chicago, it might be the same on paper, but those 24 hours are not the same at all. So thank you everyone for your insight. I really enjoyed that, hearing you all discuss about that. So if we're focusing in on companies then, what do you think people are looking for from companies in order to retain them? I saw a post on LinkedIn that said, you know, things like free fruit, 20 days of holiday, for example, those are not benefits, those are kind of standards. What kind of things do you think people are looking for in order to be retained long-term in companies?
Can I jump in? There was something that I thought about when you were sharing just now. I heard a statistic that we spend 90,000 hours of our lives working, and some statistics say 13 years, 10 whole years of our time working, and a lot of people are finding that they're not fulfilled doing that. And it's idiotic to think like, I'm just going to keep doing things that I don't enjoy. Like that's slavery. Like that's slavery when you don't have a choice, right? When you just feel like you have to keep working mind, body, soul, and spirit and get no fulfillment out of it. All you get is maybe enough to pay most of your bills, probably not all of them. And so I just think that people want to feel fulfilled at work. Like that, it shouldn't have to be a choice. Like I just have a job, or now I have to have 5 jobs. They want to be fulfilled at work. They want to be valued at work, and they want to be compensated well enough that they don't have to do all these side hustles and get creative and then get off one job, have 30-minute, commute to the next thing. I think that's what people envision for themselves. Now, I do think there are some extreme people that are doing like this hashtag I quit, and they're a little bit of a, diva and devo in some of what they're expecting. But I do think by and large, like it's human nature, if we think about like what Maslow's hierarchy of needs and what people need as like, just a basic human being, right? People should be able to be their authentic selves at work, to feel safe, to feel valued, to feel compensated, to not feel like they're being oppressed. And so I think that's just the baseline of it. It's, now some places have nap pods and, on-site daycares. There are a lot of places that have really innovative workplace resources and worksite wellness initiatives. But I think basic, whether you're a big company, small company, people just want to feel like you treat them with human dignity.
100%.
I would add and just say the flexibility, for lack of a better way to just being able to say, I had a really tough day yesterday. And, I need a mental health day, or something came up and my child is sick, and you're not looked down upon for those things. And that's not something you can like tangibly, as you mentioned, like you can't tangibly put that in your contract, but it's like just being able to have leadership that understands that. And I just think about the plethora of friends and family that I have that have different things going on, and just being able to bring your full self and say, you know what, I need to take a mental health day. I will reschedule everything that's happening. I know at my job, we work with cardiovascular health, but today we are not saving a life. Like we are not the doctors that are going to be saving someone, so it can be done tomorrow. And like just being able to bring your full self, like we can reschedule the meeting, the deadlines will be okay. Nothing's going to go and burst into flames because we didn't do it in this minute. Now, granted, not every career has that. There are doctors out here saving lives, but I'm not that kind of doctor. So I can use this in my role to just say, it's okay, and we'll get it done. So flexibility is one thing I just wanted to add.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'd like to add, in terms of flexibility, not only flexibility in terms of timelines and that sort of thing, but also, which we're learning with the pandemic, most people, many, not most, many people can do their jobs from various locations. So I think that companies have to be more flexible in where people are working from. So if you want to work from a beach, it shouldn't matter versus work at your desk. And sometimes, obviously, it's more, it's more conducive to work and be around other people. But I do think that that sort of flexibility also is as important as well.
Definitely. Thank you, Sinead. Justin, do you have anything to add?
Well, you guys, they said everything I was going to say. I wrote down flexibility, passion, calling, ability for growth, and also something that I noticed that some places you don't have a voice, and certain people don't have a voice. And I see people's voices silenced in workplaces, if I'm in meetings and things of that sort. And I wish that the culture in some employers would either do like training for microaggressions or things of that sort to make a more inclusive environment. I think that will really help retain some individuals. And I think earlier in the pandemic, and I wish I had the article, but it was a study that was, I think it was a poll that was done in the Washington Post to see if individuals wanted to return back to work. And the group that did not want to turn back to work in the US primarily were African-American women, right? And they were more productive at home. And I think that some of it dealt with some of the microaggressions that they were experiencing in the workplace, as well as the unequal amount of work distribution, which I did not even understand until I had a secretary at another job. And I was like, oh my God, this person does somebody else's job and someone else's job. So I think those type of factors should take in consideration for employers, the equal distribution of work amongst different groups of individuals that are there so that they can have a voice as well. And the flexibility, I love it, Sinead. I think if you can work in Hawaii or work in, as I was just saying about Colorado, as I almost got stuck there because of a storm, I think it would enrich my life to be able to travel a little bit more to do what I want to do.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you all. I think the benefits that you've mentioned, well, I would say I hope the benefits that you've mentioned become the norm. And in many ways, I think that they are. I think that's what we're seeing. So, for example, in Trinnovo Group, I think it really makes a difference when, like you said, it doesn't have to be written. I'm not sure. I think it was Angelica. It doesn't have to be written in the contract. But like, for example, we recently just brought out some more benefits. So we have something called period leave. So for people that have periods, as opposed to having to use a sick day or having to make up an excuse, you get 10 days in the year. And if you're having a particularly bad period, you can take time off. We have that for people that have experienced loss of pregnancy and for domestic violence. And this is for both, for all genders, it's not specific. And then in terms of flexibility, again, I think that is something that, as you mentioned, Sinead, people on the whole, except for, some key workers and for some exceptions, a lot of people are able to work from home, and it's conducive for a lot of people to do that without having to spend time commuting. You're able to kind of save money and just save energy generally. I think that element of trust and that, you know, relationship between employee and employer where it's, you know, it's mutual. So obviously as a recruiter, when I'm preparing my candidates for interviews, I always tell them, please make sure you ask questions, a lot of questions, because it's a chance for you to interview the company as well as them interviewing you. And we are in a space right now where there are worldwide more people looking for roles than there are roles available. Vice versa, sorry, there are more jobs than there are people looking, which means people can be a bit picky, and I think it's good. I encourage people to be picky. 90,000 hours, if you're spending 90,000 hours at work, it does need to be in a place where you feel valued. You're seeing your colleagues sometimes more than you see your family, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if the people around you are all like-minded and want to make sure that a culture of wellness is something that is important to everyone. So thank you all very much for that. This question I actually want to direct to Justin specifically. I would like to know how you think male or men's mental health differs from women's mental health.
That's a good question. I think mental health in both are the same. Like men and women both experience mental health issues. I really do think the socialization of it is what causes the difference in genders, if we're just talking strictly about male and female genders. Here in the United States, women are raised to express themselves outwardly or, you know, show more emotion. And it's considered a more of a feminine trait, where men are socialized to be to not express themselves and not share. And I think when men do share in certain ages, in the formative years, whether it's a woman or a man may say, oh, you don't stop crying. You don't need to you don't need to cry, or I'll give you something to cry about. And so men or young boys are trained to hide their emotions. So even though like the literature shows that women are more likely to have some type of mental illness, it's because they're able to go out and get help. Whereas here, and especially in the community that I'm in, we don't really talk about mental health like that among men. Even though that I was a part of a men's study, a men's health initiative, where we were trying to help men deal with anger issues, which is a result of some mental illnesses, right, and frustrations and things of that sort. A lot of those talks were handled at the barbershop or the church, but it was very hard to get, especially Black men and men of color, to participate, because again, it's a taboo subject in the American culture, especially for men's mental health. So I don't think that the differences only is through how we're through societal means, not really, because people equally have mental health issues. And I think some of the other female ladies here that are chiming in with shaking their head are saying the same thing possibly.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really interesting point that you made, because I remember when I was studying what was it called, like biological psychology, so study of like the brain. My professor really made it clear many times that there is no difference between if we're talking about sex, the male and the female brain whatsoever. So of course it only makes sense that it's socialization that is the difference, where on the whole generally, and hopefully again this is something that is changing for the better, and women are able to express themselves or have more safe spaces, let's say, whereas as you mentioned, for men it's, you know, at the barbershop or at the church, and those are not the best places to discuss.
Well, I don't know. If you go to a barber, sometimes those are the best psychologists for Black men. They saved a lot of marriages. They saved a lot of people from getting into trouble. But the beautiful thing that we have seen, I think, during the pandemic, especially that I've seen here in New Orleans, is that there's been this whole big push to get men to go to the doctor. right? Black men's health. And so we've seen even celebrities pour money into apps so that individuals can find therapists, Black therapists that they're comfortable with seeing. And I think that is a huge push to shift the narrative. And even though for myself as a PhD, when I go into the barbershop, a lot of them don't know my background, but as we begin to talk, I, as a person, can be a public health, official to help other Black men to go and see the doctor. And so I think by all of us, and even people who are married here who have husbands, can also talk to their husbands and their partners about mental health. And that can help spread the word to get individuals to go and get some help, because we all need it, especially during this pandemic.
We do. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate your insight on that. And back to everyone then, this is a question for all. Why is it important that we talk about Black mental health? Angelica, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll start us off, but I think Justin kind of maybe already answered, like there's that socialization aspect and that stigma that has unfortunately just really ravaged our community when it comes to mental health. Like they're seeking out help, asking for help, finding resources is more of a what's wrong with you, and that's actually not it at all, right? Like how do we go and seek therapy and care when it's on our good days? How are we consistently having these mental well-being and practices? So when something does happen, because at the end of the day, it is life and things will happen, we can then better manage them. I don't even like using the word manage, because then that makes it seem like really serious or, work. And it's not just that. Life happens. So how do we continue to push through? And I don't even like push. Okay, I don't like any of the words I'm using, but I just want us to keep going forward, right? Without the work, but this is just a norm for us. How are we taking care of bringing our best selves to life? Not work, but to life. So that's how it started.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, Angelica. I think until we get to the point where physical health and mental health are regarded as equally important, then there's still more work to do, always more work to do. Tyra, Sinead, do either of you want to?
Can I add one more thing? I'm sorry, I just thought about this. When you go see a physician, a lot of times they ask you how you're doing, if you're eating right, and maybe if they even, I don't even know if all do this, right? But you're eating right, are you exercising, are you sleeping enough? But like no one asks you like, how are you? And I think that is the goal with our mental health. Like, how are you doing? How are you mentally bringing yourself to any space, work or not? So I think we have to start asking and checking on ourselves and checking on our friends and family as well to see their full self. I'm done talking.
Thank you.
An analogy that I thought about is well, here, at least in the US healthcare system, dental insurance for your oral health is separate from your regular medical insurance, right? And so, but our minds are part of our holistic body, just like our mouth is. But the way that the system is structured is not conducive to helping, I think, refer people quickly. And then the way that it's also set up is, even if a doctor really was empathetic and wanted to ask you, how are you genuinely, they don't really have the time, right? All those billable hours and people scheduled back to back, they don't really have the time, even if they have good bedside manner, to really have that conversation. Have they even had basic mental health first aid, like a lot of community health workers and people on the front lines are getting, just to be able to identify, if a roommate or a dorm mate is having some kind of mental health trauma that's triggering, that needs to have services right away. So I just think that some kind of way we dysfunctionally think our mind is not a part of the rest of our body. And so it's stigmatized. Mental health is already stigmatized globally. And then when you think about, as Black people, in the history of our bodies being seen as machines, as mules, as vessels of labor only, or reproduction only, then we also see ourselves as kind of like a machine. We have to grind, right? We have to hustle, we have to do all these things. So we don't even allow ourselves to be human, to recognize like our body is sending these signals, these symptoms, and we quiet it and we work through it. So I think even the underlying, and I'm getting tongue-tied, physiological processes that would help us know something is wrong, culturally, we haven't been taught to recognize it. And then personally, we work past it. So I think, at an individual and a community and just like a cultural basis, we definitely need to be able to say, like, I'm not good. Like, I so appreciate Simone Biles for not doing the Olympics, and being able to say something's wrong. And I know that I'm elite in my field and people look up to me, but I have to use this moment as a platform to say something is not right. And I'm not going to injure myself, no matter how much bad publicity. Like, I have to take care of myself. So I think we have to talk about it, because it is self-care and it is taking care of our community to talk about mental health.
Yeah, thank you, Tyra. Yes to everything. And Sinead, do you have anything to add?
I just want to highlight everything that's already been said and just put a finer point on what Tyra said. I think she said it very well.
Yes, thank you. And Justin, do you have anything to add before somehow we've reached the end of our hour? So I will present the final question after, but do you have anything to add?
No, I think Tyra, that was it. She summed it up for us. That was the benediction.
Yeah.
It was kind of a rant. I think I needed to release that, y'all. Sorry. So thank you for being in space.
No, I'm glad that you did. I think even with my dissertation, it was a study on willingness to seek mental health treatment, and we looked at all races, and there was quite a significant difference where all cultures, all ethnicities did have their own stigmas. With us, with the Black participants, we were much less likely to seek help if needed. And from the qualitative analysis, it was because we just, it's exactly what both Angelica and Tyra touched on. Just not seeing yourself as really being worthy of being able to get that, or even if you do see the signs, you kind of ignore them. So it's not being taught the signs, and then the signs that you do see, you just think, that's fine, it's okay, we keep going. So I really thank you all for kind of bringing this to the forefront, because it is something that is really important, and unless we speak about it, like in the act of doing this, we are helping to remove some of the stigma around it. So these are really important discussions to be had. Now, the final question. There was a lot to speak about. We did cover a lot. I think maybe to sum up everything that we've spoken about and bring it back to thinking about the workplace, if you could all give like a brief summary of why you think it's important for employers to bring the mental and emotional health conversation to the workplace, considering everything that we've spoken about with the pandemic, the Great Resignation. There's a lot of reasons that it's important, but why do you think it's so important now more than ever? Sinead or Justin, you guys didn't, well, the last was answered before, so yeah.
Yeah, I think quickly, workplace, the first thought that came into my mind is, if you're a company and you're worried about the bottom line, it's always cheaper to keep them, as we say, So it's cheaper to retain talent than to have to train and recruit new talent, right? So I think there's that. But if we're talking about the humanity, we want to be able to respect people. We want to be able to treat people with dignity and treat people, as whole beings. So, there's the bottom line, and then there's the humane piece of it. So I think that's my pitch to companies.
Thank you.
I think for me, the only thing that I was thinking about is just improving the working relationships with your colleagues, your fellow employees. I think that will be vital, especially since we live, for example, both Dr. Tyra and I, we live in Louisiana. We experience hurricanes and all types of natural disasters here. And it is something that I have never experienced before. And we had students that may have experienced it due to Katrina, which was a major hurricane 15 years ago. And all of that occurred in a year on top of a pandemic. I really do believe if there was counseling in place for everyone, I think that would really improve the working environment, especially more specifically like where I am, because we have natural disasters. But the working relationships, human dynamics, mental health, all tied together. Counseling works. I'm a firm believer. Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you. Angelica, yes.
I'm gonna go next because I feel like Tyra's gonna leave us with some amazing last words. So I don't wanna so you can start thinking about what you're gonna say. I was just gonna note, I really believe that if you want to retain employees, I think it always looks nice like when you begin, but I think if we really want to keep your employees happy, just ask the questions, right? Open the dialogue of how we can really start the conversation, because I think that changed over time too. Like because we blurred the lines of what's work and what's home because we're working from everywhere, how are you really creating a dialogue to have your employees say, this is what's going on with me, not to share too many details, but I'm going through a tough time right now. And this is what, you don't have to share all the details, but just, I think starting the dialogue to basically sum that up. Being able to have that conversation will then help the employer identify what opportunities there are to create what works for that organization. And I think that is such an awesome opportunity for us in this space where we are in this weird time over the last 2 years where we're getting back out there, but like, what are your needs? And how do we start this dialogue on how to make you happy at this organization?
Yeah, thank you. 2 points that you made that I really love. Asking the question, open dialogue, but also not needing to over-explain, because we're all in different stages where some of us, I think maybe, let's say all of us in this panel would be perhaps more comfortable saying, I need a mental health day. This is happening and that is happening. We shouldn't need to do that. Again, looking at the humanity side, we shouldn't need to express our pain, lay our pain up there to be kind of heard in that way. So I really like that. Thank you. And then finally, Tyra.
Thinking of what Justin brought up about natural disasters and climate change, and I'm reading a book, actually a gentleman from the UK, Climate Change is Racist, and just it talks so much about, it's just so much, but just thinking about climate change is our reality. The way that we're going to survive is by being resilient, and so you're going to need a resilient workforce, you're going to need resilient leaders. And just continuing with the status quo and not showing up and treating people with empathy, with compassion, with patience, with flexibility is just going to mean you're not going to be a company that survives, and another company's going to buy you out, or some young, smart entrepreneur is going to, give you a run for your money and you're going to close. And so I think that if companies really look at it, if we have to talk about the bottom line, do you want your company to survive? Where you're going to need people. Artificial intelligence, robots, computers, they're not going to be able to do everything. And they're still going to need humans to program them anyway. So we really need to just take care of people. Like, it's part of my moral fabric. I recognize that it's not part of everyone's moral fabric, but companies really need to look at their missions and values and take a hard look to say, are we doing right by people? And they will tell you yes or no. I mean, they're posting online, they're doing these very demonstrative quit videos and, very transparent reviews of employers online. And so they just really have to determine if they want their company to survive and if they're willing to really invest. And the table that I'm sitting at is like real wood. When I was in grad school, IKEA was cool. It was cheap. It worked. But if you really want an investment, and so companies really need to take the mindset of investing in people so that they can see a return on their investment. It's not just, a quick turnaround. They need to make investments in people. So hopefully I did it justice because y'all were hyping me up and I appreciate
it. No, thank you. Honestly, I think, yeah, really good. Everyone answered the last question, right? Good. Yeah, thank you. And I think, yeah, bottom line, what both Sinead and Tyra touched on, actually, I think everyone mentioned this. Companies will not survive in the world that we're moving into. If wellness is not at the forefront, companies won't survive, because there are companies where wellness is at the forefront, and people would much rather work for companies that care about them than companies that don't. And I think it's pretty simple, actually. So thank you all so much for your insight on that and all the other questions. And to our audience, that's about it from us for now. Thank you again for sharing your morning or your afternoon or your evening or your lunchtime with us. For everyone that wants to continue the conversation further, the networking link is in the chat, so we can continue this on.